beginning.
That's only the beginning, President Trump says, doubling down on his attacks against former President Barack Obama over the FBI probe of former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. This comes as Fox News is told even more documents connected to the probe have now been declassified. That includes the names of Obama officials who were behind the unmasking of General Flynn. We'll get to that in a moment. In the meantime, Senator Mike Lee, Republican from Utah. He sits on the Senate Judiciary Committee. He joins us live. Senator, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Prior to the information we're being told is being declassified now, we'd already seen these transcripts from the House Intel Committee probe, the Flynn court documents that have really raised sharp questions about how all of this was handled. Where do you think it's all headed?
Look, what we know right now is that power was abused against the incoming Trump administration. It was abused against General Flynn and Carter Page and President Trump. We will get to the bottom of this. It's not a question of if, but when, and how deep it runs. But what we do know now is that this is casting a bright light on the need to get to the bottom of what happened and to bring about reform within the FBI. And we can start with that this week by passing the FISA amendments that Senator Leahy and I have introduced, among others, so that we can bring about reform that makes the FBI more accountable to the American people.
Real quickly on that, because as you know, the Attorney General from your own party, William Barr, has said he's concerned about reforms to the FISA law might make it more difficult to crack down on terrorists. Quickly, before we get to the new information, how do you say this reform will actually make the law better and make sure Americans are not spied upon?
The Lee-Leahy Amendment makes the FBI more accountable to the American people, and it does so by allowing the court and requiring the court in any sensitive investigation, including in any investigation of a political candidate or a political office holder, to send in an amicus curiae or friend of the court advocate before the FISA court, so that the American people can have some expertise in the courtroom that isn't part of the government, that isn't part of the FBI's investigative team.
Yeah, well, that was certainly not there, as you suggest, which led to the surveillance of Carter Page and others. Bottom line, last week we have this video, we'll put it up, of Rick Grinnell, the acting director of national intelligence, went over to the Justice Department with a satchel of documents. Fox News reported this first. At the time, we didn't know exactly what was in there. Now we know that part of it, at least, is that he has now declassified a list of names of Obama officials who unmasked General Flynn's name. The bottom line, as you know, Senator, is that when the U.S. government wiretaps someone, like the Russian ambassador in this case, during the presidential transition, if an American name gets swept up in there, it's supposed to be blacked out. If you leak that name, if you put it out there for political purposes, it's illegal. So now we know there's a list of Obama officials who, quote unquote, unmasked General Flynn. How significant might this be, sir?
Well, I think it's very significant. And, you know, among the many allegations that were made, we know of instances in which President Obama was in the room with Vice President Biden, with Sally Yates, and with others in which these things were discussed. I think Vice President Biden needs to be called to account for this situation. But look, this is the beginning, not the end of this investigation. We're going to find out a whole lot more. And I think this is a classic example of the abuse of power that can happen when too much power is concentrated within the federal government.
Well, how do you get accountability, bottom line? Because when you talk about how you believe Joe Biden should answer questions on this, he's barely doing news conferences, as you know. When his son Hunter Biden's name came up in the impeachment probe, Democrats didn't want to go anywhere near having him testify. So how do you get him and or other Obama officials into the Senate? Is it the Senate Judiciary Committee with Senator Graham? Is it John Durham, the prosecutor? Where do you get accountability?
I hope and expect that all of the above will occur. I think the Senate Judiciary Committee, I think Mr. Durham will also play a role in this, and I think the American people will have a front row seat to this. As Vice President Biden is now seeking the presidency, the American people will have the opportunity to inquire into what he knew, when he knew it, and what he did. And I think they're going to be concerned about what they find.
In the last minute we have, why do you think that former President Barack Obama weighed in last week on General Flynn? Is it simply because the Attorney General decided to intervene in the case? This gave him a chance to push back? Or is there something else going on? Is the Obama team worried about what's spilling out?
You know, I found that curious when he weighed in. He's been relatively quiet when commenting on political matters. All of a sudden he chose to last week. It begs the question, why? I can't get into his head. I don't know exactly what he had in mind, but I do wonder if he knew that some things were about to be released and he wanted to get ahead of the game.
All right. Senator Mike Lee, we certainly appreciate you coming and answering the questions. Have a good day. Thank you.